I think viscerally, most Americans don't like to see a big country bullying another, and they just feel it's wrong and want to do something about it.
This is my first video update coming to you from Athens, Greece on this Saturday afternoon. Let's talk about some news. And let's start things off with Joe Bidenopoulos, Greece's favorite son. He was being interviewed by ABC News, and they asked Biden about the Chinese peace plan, which it really wasn't a peace plan. It was more of a roadmap. Everyone thought it was going to be some sort of peace plan. The Chinese put out a type of roadmap, and they asked Biden about it, and Biden was like, you know, we're not going to accept this because anything coming out of China is pretty much a no-go. That was what Biden pretty much told the ABC News reporter. And then the reporter asked Biden about fighter jets to Ukraine, and Biden said there are going to be no fighter jets to Ukraine. What Ukraine needs right now are tanks and artillery and ammo and HIMARS and stuff like that. So Biden poured cold water on the Chinese roadmap to peace, and he poured cold water on fighter jets, U.S. fighter jets, to Ukraine. And no one was expecting the U.S., the Biden White House, to accept any kind of Chinese peace proposal or roadmap for peace or anything, because politically it would be impossible for the United States to accept such a proposal. Even if the proposal was 100% in Ukraine's favor, the U.S. would still have to reject it. And the EU would have to reject it because they can't have China mediating a ceasefire for Russia and Ukraine. It's politically impossible for the U.S. and for the EU to accept that. But China's proposal, the roadmap that they put out there, was interesting. It was an interesting proposal. It wasn't very specific on its points, but it just basically said that in order to achieve peace, what has to happen is that the escalation has to stop. NATO has to back off. The US and the EU need to stop pouring weapons into Ukraine. And then we can get to some sort of negotiated settlement. That was pretty much what China said. They said that NATO alliances, these types of alliances and military blocs, only make things worse. And legitimate security guarantees, a legitimate security framework needs to be put in place, which considers the interests of all the parties, Ukraine, Russia, and considers all of their interests. And that was pretty much that was it. I mean, you know, it wasn't anything groundbreaking. It was pretty much common sense stuff, and it does run counter to the narrative of the collective West when working towards some sort of cessation to hostilities in Ukraine, because China's premise, what they based their roadmap to peace on, was that weapons need to stop pouring into Ukraine. Once the weapons stop pouring in, then we can start talking about peace. While the collective West, their idea of a cessation to hostilities is more weapons in Ukraine, so that Ukraine can achieve some sort of a victory or leverage over Russia, which would then bring Russia to the table, a broken country to the table, and then the collective West can impose its dictates on Russia. It's two very different philosophies. China's stop pouring weapons in, and then we can get to a settlement, while the collective West is keep pouring weapons in, so that we can bring Russia to its knees, and then we can get to a settlement. So two very different strategies. But we had no real big February 24th symbolic events from Russia, which we were being told would happen. The collective West mainstream media, Elensky himself, Biden, Ursula, EU, US officials, they were all telling us that come February 24th, Russia was going to do something very symbolic. They were going to launch some sort of big missile strike or some big offensive, so that they could get this big 1-year anniversary media PR victory, because that's the way Putin operates. That's what they were telling us for the last 3-4 weeks, that Russia is all about symbolism. I think that's like a direct quote that one of these guys, I don't know if it was Blinken or Ursula or Borrell, one of these officials told us Russia operates on symbolism, and so February 24th, expect something very big, something very symbolic to happen. And nothing happened. Nothing happened. Putin gave his Federal Assembly speech, his State of the Nation speech, which he kind of does every year or every other year. And Russia celebrated the holiday that they celebrate every year, the Defender of the Fatherland holiday. And that was that. And it was a big celebration in Luzhniki Stadium, but they've had big celebrations like that at Luzhniki in the past, actually. Very big concerts and celebrations in that stadium in years before the conflict in Ukraine. So that's not unusual either. So there was no big symbolic event on the side of Russia. But what we did get from the US and from the EU is we got all kinds of symbolic things going on to commemorate the 1-year anniversary of the special military operation. We had U.S. sanctions, which were specifically timed for February 24th. Victoria Nuland, she said that the U.S. was going to put sanctions together just so they could announce sanctions on February 24th. Symbolic. Symbolic there. That's some symbolism. The EU, they were in an absolute panic to try and put together a 10th sanctions package. A meaningless 10th sanctions package. Even Michel said that the EU vice president or president or whatever his position is, he even said that the sanctions are pretty much meaningless. There's no more sanctions that the EU can really impose on Russia, and anything going forward is just kind of symbolic. I mean, even Michel said that. But they rushed around yesterday afternoon to try and put something together so they could announce it on February 24th, and that's what they did. Yesterday afternoon, on Friday afternoon, February 24th, they announced a 10th sanctions package, and it was pretty much watered down from what I understand. There was no sanctions on nuclear energy because Hungary put a stop to that. No sanctions on diamonds because Belgium put a stop to that. There was issues with sanctioning Russia's rubber exports and stuff like that. And then Poland came out and they said, well, if we can't sanction all these things, well, we're not going to vote yes for the 10th sanctions package until we get a promise that in the 11th sanctions package, we're going to discuss these things. They came up with like a 5 or 6 point bullet list, something like that, where the EU countries had to promise that they're going to talk about diamonds and nuclear energy and stuff like that for the 11th sanctions package. And then Poland said, okay, now that I've got everyone's promise that we're going to talk about this in the 11th sanctions package, I'll vote yes for the 10th sanction package. It was just a complete freaking mess. But they got the announcement. That's the important part for them. They got the announcement. That's what they want. And that's what they got. The UN, the US was running around the UN trying to get a resolution to condemn Russia. And all they came up with was a very watered down UN resolution, like a pretty meaningless resolution. That even countries that voted for it, they were even upset with the US. They even told the US, why did you make us vote yes for this resolution? Because it's completely meaningless. Why did we go through all this trouble? Why did you waste our time? But the US had to get a UN resolution before February 24th. They had to get that announced and in place as well. I mean, everything from the collective West was symbolic. But they had to get all of these media, PR, headlines out there. And they had to get them done by February 24th. Projection. It is always projection. They say that Russia's going to do something symbolic and Russia doesn't do anything. symbolic, business as usual, and it's the US and the EU, and they're the ones running around trying to get symbolic stuff announced. All projection. Elensky gave a press conference as well to commemorate the 1 year anniversary of the special military operation, and he spoke to reporters, and he said some interesting things during his press conference. Some very interesting comments coming out of Zelensky. He said, when he was answering one question, he said, "I think that no country in the world can stand alone against such an aggressive war. Probably the United States could, but fortunately, they have no borders with the Russian Federation." Yeah. I remember when Sarah Palin was running with John McCain against Obama. Remember that, when she was picked as the vice president for John McCain, and she came out with a statement. The governor, I think she was the governor of Alaska, she came out with a statement, something along the lines of, "I sit on my porch in Alaska and I can see Russia." I think Elensky needs to look at a map, at a globe, and understand exactly how big Russia is and how big the United States is, and rethink that comment that he made. Elensky also said that you can't negotiate with Putin. There's no negotiations with Putin. He says something like, Putin is not the same person since the conflict started, so there's nothing to talk about with Putin. He said that Ukraine is getting ready for a big spring offensive. He said they're training pilots, they're training in the Leopard tanks, and all of these things. They're training in Ukraine, they're training outside of Ukraine, and there's going to be this big offensive. And Zelensky promised, once again, he pretty much promised that Ukraine is going to be in Crimea. He's going to retake Crimea come spring, summer. He said stuff like that as well. I mean, it was really all over the place. Really all over the place. Russia is, on the one hand, Putin is losing the conflict. The Russian military is third rate. That's what some U.S. analyst or general, or who was DeSantis? I think DeSantis said that the Russian military is third rate. Anyway, the Russian military is third rate and they can't do anything right. But then, no one can defeat the Russian military except maybe the United States, according to Elensky. So, it's the best of both worlds, right? They're getting it both ways. Russia's losing, they're incompetent, they're a bunch of buffoons, their military. Putin's crazy, he doesn't know what he's doing. But then, no one can defeat Russia except the United States, but the U.S. doesn't share a border with Russia. They have no border with the Russian Federation, so what do they know, according to Elensky? Elensky also told the American people, pretty much, he was telling the American people, you have to give us money, you have to give us weapons, because if you don't give us money and weapons, well, then Russia's going to invade, all of Europe, all of NATO. So we're stopping Russia from invading NATO members. But Russia's running out of ammo as well. So how are they going to invade NATO members if they're running out of ammo? I mean, the whole thing is just it was all over the place. The whole thing was all over the place. And then we had Christiane Amanpour, very sophisticated journalist. She was also there. Seems like she's been spending quite some time in Kiev, interviewing various people and getting out her message. And Christiane Amanpour, she asked Elensky, what exactly does victory look like? When we say as long as it takes, what does that mean? What is victory for Ukraine? That was her question. And Zelensky said that if the collective West stays united and they build this big united, I think he said a big united fist. I'll put a link to this video down below so you can see it. This question from Christiane Amanpour. I'll put a link to that. And he's like, if we create a big fist, a strong fist, then we'll punch through Russia's defenses, and we're going to take all of Crimea, and that'll be victory. Something along those lines. That was Christian Amanpour's question to Elensky. Elensky, Christian Amanpour. I'm a very sophisticated journalist, international correspondent, and I want to ask you a question. President Elensky, what does "as long as it takes" look like? That's my question. Christian Amanpour, sophisticated journalist, international correspondent. Yes, if we build a big fist, a very big fist, we will break Russia. But we have to build a very big fist. And money. I need another 10 billion, 20 billion. I need 20 billion. Then we will win if I get 20 billion and we build a big fist. Oh, thank you very much, President Elensky. That's my only question. I'm Christian Amanpour, very sophisticated journalist, international correspondent. Thank you very much, President Elensky. That was pretty much the exchange between Amanpour and Elensky. It was a complete. It was all over the place. That's pretty much it. That was February 24th. That was the big symbolic day, February 24th, and all the symbolic stuff came from the collective West, pretty much, and Elensky's press conference. That was it. That was everything. So, let's see. Do we have anything else to discuss? Biden was asked about Ohio the other day, and he said he's not going to go. He's like, I'm not going to go. I don't care. That's pretty much what Biden said. It's not Ukraine, so why should I go? That's what he told reporters. We have presidential elections in Nigeria today. I believe today Nigeria is voting. 93 million registered voters are going to pick a new president. And I think there's 3 main contenders for president. And I was on Twitter the other day, and I saw an ad pop up. And it was Blinken and the UN, the U.S. ambassador to the UN, Linda Thomas Greenfield, and Samantha Power. And this was a video ad addressing the people of Nigeria to go and vote. And when I saw that ad on Twitter, I said, oh boy, that's not good. Whenever you have Blinken and Power, Samantha Power, these people talking about elections in your country, that's not a good sign. That is not a good sign at all. So we'll see how things go in Nigeria with this big election day. We'll wait for the results and we'll analyze, but I'm sure there is a candidate that the U.S. State Department is pulling for. I believe, I'm not 100%, but I believe it's Peter Obi, I believe, is the guy. He's the social media guru candidate. But I don't know his positions, and I don't know if he's the real deal or what's going on there. But he is one of the front runners. And let's wait and see. Let's wait and see what happens with big elections in Nigeria. We also had Russia give a warning to the U.S. and NATO and Ukraine over Transnistria. So we got Russia's official warning to not try anything funny in Transnistria, which is significant. And we also had a tweet from Representative Paul Gosar of Arizona in response to Elon Musk's tweet of Victoria Nuland, when Elon Musk said that Victoria Nuland, she's the one that is escalating everything in this conflict. And Representative Gosar said, Elon is correct. Both Nuland and Blinken have a deeply rooted irrational hatred of Russia. and they seek to get the US involved in another world war. These are dangerous fools who can get us all killed. That was what Representative Gosar tweeted. I think he's being a little hard on Vicki Nuland, Tory Nuland. She's just a small town girl living in this lonely world, and she took a midnight train going anywhere. She's got a dream. She's just a small town girl with a dream to destroy Russia. I think Elon and Representative Gosar are just being a little too hard on Toria Nuland, small town girl with big dreams. One day, I'm going to get out of this small town, Tory Nuland, a young Tory Nuland said. I'm going to make my way out of this small town and I'm going to destroy Russia. All my dreams are going to come true when I destroy Russia. So, yeah, that's Tory Nuland. We had this Wall Street Journal article about the trip to Paris that Elensky took, and he met with Macron and Schultz and who else? I think that's it. Macron, Schultz, and Elensky, and they met in Paris. And according to the Wall Street Journal, the EU officials, Schultz and Macron, they told Elensky that they'll give Elensky some sort of NATO premium membership or semi-membership if he gets to the negotiating table with Russia. We keep repeating, this is according to sources from the Wall Street Journal, we keep repeating that Russia mustn't win, but what does that mean? If the war goes on for long enough, with this intensity, Ukraine's losses will become unbearable, the senior French official told the Wall Street Journal, and no one believes they will be able to retrieve Crimea as a way to encourage Elensky. The outlet said British Prime Minister, Sunak was there, British Prime Minister Sunak has put together a plan to give Kiev broader access to advanced military equipment, weapons, and ammunition to be considered at the NATO summit in July. The NATO summit must produce a clear offer to Ukraine, also to give Elensky a political win that he can present at home as an incentive for negotiations, an unnamed British official told the outlet. If Moscow sees that the West is prepared to support Kiev even more, maybe it will be persuaded it can't achieve its military objective, the official said. And the Wall Street Journal said that over dinner at the Elysee Palace earlier this month, Macron and Schultz told Elensky he needed to start considering peace talks, according to people familiar with the conversation. London, Paris, and Berlin would not comment on the record. Yeah, I think this is BS. That's what I think. I think this whole thing is BS because Elensky isn't calling the shots. He isn't making the decisions. I could see Macron being that arrogant to try and put together some deals and some offers to try and go, say, over the head of Nuland and Bidenopoulos. You know, Macron does have that type of arrogance, but they must have known. Surely they know that Elensky isn't calling the shots in any deal that they put together or that they offer Elensky, especially with regards to NATO. That you're just having to get the approval of the United States. I mean, they must have known that. I'm sure they know that. And the fact that they say Rishi Sunak promised certain things, come on, man. Rishi Sunak can't promise anything unless he gets the okay from Washington. So I don't know. I think this article is kind of BS. I don't know why the Wall Street Journal is putting this stuff out there, but it does show something interesting. It does show how the mindset of the Europeans and the neocons, how their mindset works, because the Wall Street Journal says that if Moscow sees that the West is prepared to support Kiev even more, maybe it will be persuaded it can't achieve its military objectives. It's a very interesting statement, isn't it? It does fall in line with the collective West strategy for Ukraine. which is to try and bluff their way to a victory. Right? That's what it's all about. Keep on escalating. Keep on saying as long as it takes, we're united, as long as it takes. And maybe, just maybe, Russia's going to throw in the towel if you can achieve some battlefield victories, a Kherson, a Kharkiv, or something like that, missile strikes in Crimea. If you can get those going as well, hitting the bridge or something like that, maybe you can discourage Russia and discourage Putin so that, he says, Putin just says, I can't deal with this anymore. I'm done. I can't break the European Union. I can't break their will, their resolve, their unity. So I'm going to go to the negotiating table and call it quits. That's kind of what their strategy is, and I thought that was an interesting part to this article. The 10th sanctions package kind of says the same thing. I'm looking at an Al Jazeera article, and they're talking about the EU's 10th sanctions package and how the whole package is just meant to show that the EU is unified and that Russia needs to surrender because they're not going to break the will of the EU. They were talking about the sanctions. A diplomat was talking about the sanctions to Al Jazeera, and she said, this is very bad optics. What was supposed to be key here is a message of solidarity with Ukraine on this special day, said one diplomat involved in the confidential negotiations between the 27 EU countries in the bloc's hub, Brussels. See, that's an interesting statement. What was supposed to be key here is a message of solidarity with Ukraine on this special day. That's what the sanctions was all about, to show unity, solidarity, not so much sanctioning Russia, because there's nothing left to sanction, but to give the impression that the EU is united, can't be broken. And the hope is, and it is the hope strategy, the hope is that Russia's just going to run out of gas. They're going to run out of weapons, they're going to run out of gas, and they're going to say, we're done. We're done. We can't go on any longer. They haven't really studied history, have they? Because if they studied history, they would know that Russia has a very long-term view of things. And the Russians do not surrender. They do not give up. So, I mean, I don't understand. I understand their strategy, but I don't understand who's advising them on this strategy, because it's clearly not going to work. Let's do a clown world and wrap this video up. And this clown world, where is it here? Let me pull it up. The tweet, the NATO tweet. That's what this clown world is going to be about. And I'm sure everyone knows exactly what I'm talking about. By the way, there's a bunch of villages that are also now being taken around Bakhmut by the Wagner guys. They're confirming that settlements of Berkhovka, Yagodonye, as well as Dubovo Vasilevo are under the control of Wagner. I'm not sure if this is 100% confirmed, but this is the news that we're getting. Village after village is falling to the Russians. And keep in mind that the villages that are being taken over by the Wagner guys and the Russian military, the fighting that's being done is being done by the forces that have been fighting in Donbass from day one. The other 300, 500,000, 700,000 mobilized Russian troops are not involved in any of this. What more do you need to know than that? I mean, Ukraine is pulling men and women from into the battlefield. Young men, 17 years old, young women, and they're throwing them to the front lines. And Russia is still fighting the the conflict with the original force that started this conflict. And we're supposed to believe that the Russians have lost more soldiers than Ukraine, or the Russians are doing poorly. How is that doing poorly? I just don't. It doesn't make sense. If anything, it means that Russia has conserved its manpower, and it's still been able to gain ground in Bakhmut and to inflict damage on the Ukraine military, to the point where the Ukraine military is desperate for soldiers, is desperate for manpower. Anyway, let's do the clown world and wrap this video up. And we have this tweet from NATO. It was actually the 9th tweet of a 10-tweet thread, and I don't know who greenlit this tweet in the NATO offices to post this, but boy, was it bad. It says, Ukraine is hosting one of the great epics of this century. We are Harry Potter and William Wallace, the Na'vi and Han Solo. We're escaping from Shawshank and blowing up the Death Star. We are fighting with the Harkonnens and challenging Thanos. Boy. PR, media. That's what they do. They definitely do PR and media. That's for sure. Anyway, that's the video, everybody. The Duran.locals.com. We are also on Rockfin as well. And go to the Duran shop, 10% off. Use the code. Good day. Take care.